Hello and welcome to Charterhouse School. I'm going to do another Shoeoff test. This time I'm going to do a Yasso 800s test. So the idea of that is that you run for 10 800s and your time in minutes and seconds is meant to be your predicted time for the marathon in hours and minutes. So what I'm going to do, as I'm hoping to break a 3-hour marathon, is to run them at try and run them at 2:56 per 800. The advantage of that is that it's exactly 22 seconds per 400. Now the twist here, I'm going to run in 5 different shoes. I'm going to start in the Pegasus Turbos. Here we go. And then move on to the 4% Flyknits, the Next Percent, the Carbon X from HOKAs, and finally the new Adios 5. So basically that will allow me to run each twice in each shoe. So the first few, maybe you think that should be easier as my heart rate's lower, and as we get later on, should hopefully see whether there's any difference in the effort required. I've also got my Stride footboard on today. No, it's not overly warm today, but it's not that windy, so I'm hoping that won't affect things too much. So I'm getting a little warm-up done now and get this going before we've got some light left. Okay, see you later, bye. Okay, that one was 3 minutes exactly. I've had a bit harder going than I thought, actually. These are probably the hardest shoes. Let's get into 4% and see if we find it any easier. Okay, so the 4%'s done, into the next percents now. They felt a bit easier in the 4%, maybe just slightly warmed up. So I hit those 22 seconds for a 2:56 more or less exactly, so that was good. Okay, so the next percent's done. They weren't too bad. It's not too bit tired though. It's quite a tough session, this 2:56, 22 per 400. I hit them pretty well. Okay, so the what are they? Carbon X is done. It was about 3 minutes exactly, so it's slightly harder in them, but I'm just getting more tired. Okay, now we start round 2. So back in the Turbo 2s again. Got them ready to go. We've got about 45 seconds to the next rep. That was just about 2:59 in the Adios. Not too bad. Struggling to hit the 22 seconds quarter now. So interestingly, so far the Vaporflies, the next percent have been the fastest, maybe the easiest. We'll see later on. Okay, second one done in the Turbo 2. So we've now started the so down 6 now, 4 to go. I'm back in the 4%, which I thought, if anything, they were the easiest last time. Maybe because there's a second rep, which always makes them easier in a way. Okay, so the 4%'s done. I did it at 2:57, so it just felt slightly easier than the other few. Maybe it's all on. I've actually managed to get the 22 seconds nailed on. Felt slightly a bit dicey on the corners as it gets a bit cold. It has been a bit icy, I think, early on today. Okay, next percent's done. They weren't too bad. 2:56 on the nose, so certainly feeling that the Vaporfly 4% and Next Percent are definitely helping here slightly. Just feels slightly easier. I think I'm getting slightly faster times. I'm actually hitting the times I'm hoping to get, which is the key thing. Okay, last one to come up then. So we've now got the Adios in the lightest, the thinnest soles of the shoes on test. It's almost dark now, so just about get this one last one in before we can see where we're going. That's about my minute warning, I think. So the Carbon X's were slightly harder. I think I'm just getting tired as well. So it was like 2:58 on that one. It's just struggling to get those 22 seconds a lap, so just 2 seconds short, but not too bad. Hello, so we finally finished the session. I've come up to somewhere a bit more light to say hello. So last time I was in the Adios, not too bad, but working hard, about 2:57 I think on that last one. Hello, I'm now back at the my PC, and let's have a look at all this data here now. This is a whole raft of stats to digest. So let's have a quick delve in and see if we can see any of the finer points. So first of all, just to recap, we had 10 800s where I was aiming to run 2:56 even pace for each one, which I tried to do that by setting my watch to bleep every 22 seconds as you came past each 400. So that would be 88 per 400 and 2:56 for the 800. And I did it in 5 shoes, starting off with the Pegasus Turbo 2, Nike 4% Flyknit, Nike Vaporfly NEXT Percent, HOKA only Carbon X, the Adidas Adios 5, and then repeated them for the next 5. So the idea is that we gave each one
two opportunities to have a go. So if there's any oddities about being fresh or just an error in the data, we should be able to spot anything odd. So if you look at the times here, I didn't quite manage to hit 2:56 on all of them, and that was possibly slightly because maybe it's just slightly harder in each of the different shoes. So starting off with the Turbo 2s, we just about just was a few seconds slow there, and this is my split at 400. So you can see I was maybe just warming into that one. Then the 4% and the next percent, they definitely, after the initial one in the turbos, you kind of think you've got warmed into it, you've kind of got used to the pace, and I was able to hit those two dead on. Now, what was interesting when I moved to the Carbon X, which is a shoe that to be fair, I'd only just got and only done a couple of treadmill runs in before, so I wasn't an overly familiar shoe. But it was quite noticeable that I was actually found that harder to get my speed up in those, and despite the fact that my heart rate was averaging 134 there, I was actually noticeably slow and didn't quite hit the target. It's kind of similar in the Adios 5 the first time round. Again, you know, I was a bit slow there. Maybe I should have put in more effort and just really try to hit those marks as possible. But I was sort of almost trying to do even effort with a mindful to do the times. So the fact that these times are the fastest doesn't mean to say I was sort of not putting more effort in. It just seemed to be easier to do so. So when we came around to the second time round, the turbos didn't do so bad there. They looked as good as the Adios or the Carbon X's. It seemed like a slight bit of heart rate drift already by then, 135. But as soon as I put the 4% to the next percents in, it kind of similar to the previous time, without the heart rate really changing an awful lot. In fact, if anything, the next percent there, it went down at 1 beat on average. I was able to actually hit those times more or less. And then when I went back into the Carbon X's, again, my heart rate increased, although I was getting tired by then. And again, I wasn't able to quite hit that mark. I think on the last one, I probably put in a bit more effort in the Adios 5, and as I was actually hit the time, and you can see just a very slight rise in heart rate. But again, you know, you kind of expect that because I'd already run the 10th one by then. So I managed to average 257.9. Let's call that 258. So that's possibly bodes well for my marathon. That may predict a 258, which is probably at the moment not far off what I may be able to do, having done today. This was actually, I recorded this a bit later, a marathon pace run of a 650 mile pace, which is pretty much bang on that time. So if you look at the max heart rates, you can see a very gradual shift upwards in as they went. Not really much difference as we went on, really, is there? So I don't think we can read too much into that. So let's have a look at the power. Now I was using the Stride wind one, which also measures the wind. Now there wasn't actually that much wind. If you go over to this side, I've actually recorded the weather from two different sources. One was the Climate app and one's from Garmin Connect. So it was saying when I started the temperature was basically between about 4 and 5 degrees. It was quite cold. That's why I was wearing like a short sleeve top with a vest underneath. I'm still wearing shorts though. Pretty much not much wind at all really, just about a 5 mile average. And as I went on, it got maybe just dropped a degree in temperature towards the end, but didn't think the weather was really a factor in this. So the power was a bit odd because the Stride actually measures the contribution of power from like wind detection, and for all the shoes other than Adios, it was kind of similar. In fact, it was almost similar shoe to shoe each time. They had this sort of spike where for some reason the Adios 5 got 10% air power. So that means that obviously the power recorded in the Adios was way higher than the other ones. But I think that's just basically a false reading because it certainly wasn't. I certainly wasn't putting any more effort in, that much more effort in. So what I've done here is taken out the contribution from the air power, and then also you can see that the powers then are much more even. I'm not sure you can read too much into that. I think they're all pretty much the same, give or take, experimental error. As I noticed here that a plus or minus 2%, 2 watt error, just on the fact that it's only measuring air power to the nearest integer anyway. So when it says 323, that could be between 321 and 325. So when you've got 319, that could actually be the same figure. So I'm not really seeing much to get excited about in terms of how the power changes between shoe. Now look at some of the other metrics. That's my cadence. I put the cadence measured by both devices, although I think in this case the Garmin and the Stride did measure these things pretty much the same. Again, not showing a huge amount. Maybe my cadence got a bit higher towards the end when I got slightly tired. A bit hard to say though, really, only a few steps per minute in it. Vertical oscillation, again, pretty similar. Maybe got a bit lower towards the end. I was getting tired. Not sure I can really see any difference between the shoes. Ground contact time. Now, Garmin and Stride measure this differently. Garmin, I was measuring it from chest strap, and Stride was measuring it from the foot pod. So that's measuring it at a different place for a start. So Stride seems to measure it longer. It did seem to have a bit of an erroneous value with the Carbon X there. But otherwise, can you see any difference there between any of these? Again, it's hard to say, isn't it, really? I can't see any huge differences between the shoes in that metric. Ground contact time balance. This is basically from the heart rate strap, like an HRM Tri I think I was wearing. And then it's 50-50, means you're sort of perfectly balanced. So interestingly, the next percent in the Carbon X, I was spot on there. For some reason in the Adios, I got a bit more of a right lean on that one, slightly leaning to the right. So I'm not quite sure what to make of that. But again, I think if they say if you're within sort of 48 to 52, that's kind of normal. So I think these were all within sort of normal parameters. Leg LSS, leg stride stiffness, something like that. I can't remember what that is. Again, I'm not seeing a huge difference here. Maybe the next percent is a bit lower. Maybe where is lower in the Carbon X. Again, all these metrics, they're all sort of very subtle differences. Very hard to tell in the 3-minute airfoot what was going on. So I think in this test, it wasn't quite so obvious. I think really from the data, all I can really say is that I was able to actually hit the 256 targets in the 4% and the next percent just slightly more easily than the other ones, because I think I would have to put in a lot more effort to actually hit those targets. So not hugely conclusive, this test, but I think you could definitely see that when I was wearing the Vaporflies, the 2 versions of them, then it was affording me some help. Maybe I also needed to wear track spikes for another test, but I'm all a bit wary wearing track spikes at my age of 53. Things might go wrong, like dodgy hamstrings and stuff. But so unlike my first test, whether the next percent was like a clear leader, I think we can only sort of point to very subtle differences here. And I think, also the fact that the Carbon X is a fairly new shoe to me, so maybe I was giving it a bit of disservice by marking it down. But I'd say on the pecking order of shoes in this test, really couldn't really distinguish the 4% and the next percent in this test. Then perhaps the Adios 5, then perhaps the Turbo 2s, and the Carbon X. Maybe I found that the sort of the hardest shoe to run in this test. But anyway, I hope you found that interesting. And I've got one more of these that I've got to do, where I did a sort of a 2.5 mile sort of rolling circuit in small shoes. So I'll get that one posted up again. Maybe not. That one wasn't quite as conclusive as my first test, which I'll link in, where I did like a 2 mile flattish effort on those. So yeah, to recap on this one, so certainly don't seem that you'll be slowed up with the next percent and the 4%, but all these other shoes will give you a good turn, I'm sure. Okay, thanks so much then. See you on the next one. Bye.